Okay, hello. So it's 1:45. I'm gonna go ahead and get started in just a second so I can be respectful of your time. The session runs until 3:15, so we've got about 90 minutes together. And this is MTSS 203. We're going to be talking about evidence-based practices. So if you look at the MTSS framework, that last column, the evidence-based practices, we're going to talk about that column today. I can't, hold on. Okay, there we go. Just making sure all my buttons work. I put this slide up just so you can kind of know where some MTSS resources live. You might have already found them this morning or accessed them already, but there is an MTSS website, which you can access with that QR code, or sometimes I'll just Google OSDE MTSS and then it pops up on Google. So that's also an option. There is the framework on there, as well as the introductory guide, which looks like that on the page. And we're going to reference the introductory guide as well today. And then the intervention library, which we'll talk about more in a little bit, is up on that website too. So all of the MTSS things there, and then the QR code if you want to access it that way. Like I said, this is the framework, and we're just going to talk about that evidence-based practice section today. So we'll go through like tier 1 school-wide, tier 1 class-wide, and then tier 2 interventions and tier 3. So what are evidence-based practices? Evidence-based practices are assessments, curriculum, instruction, activities, strategies, and interventions derived from well-designed, peer-reviewed studies demonstrating effectiveness in meeting the needs of students. So we're going to talk a little bit about like where do I find them, how do I find them, and then when do I use them, or even like how do I find them and how do I use them, as well as when do you use them. So we're gonna have a lot of breakout type of like conversations today and time to talk with other people. So if you are at a table just with your school and you feel like it would be more beneficial to talk with another school to learn about like the practices that they use and the supports, you're welcome to move. But that's okay. We'll also have opportunities to talk to tables next to us and around the room. So if you don't want to move, that's okay. But if you're like, I think I'll get more out of being with another school, you're welcome to move. That's okay. So I have some example data just to like kind of intro this, the tiers as we go through them, because we're going to kind of break it down. And this comes right from the introductory guide. So school A's data has an example set of 10 students. Based on MTSS anticipated percentages, schools often use universal screening data to base their proficiency scores. Then they match the proficiency from universal screening to tiered placements. The data indicates that only 4 students are receiving tier 1 supports and 6 students are needing tier 2 and 3. If teams use this method for data analysis, they may inaccurately push resources and options to tier 2 and 3 supports and feel as though they are unable to catch up. Then I have school B. I'm sorry, there's a lot of words on this slide. But tier 3 has also 10 students, and they're also the same as school A. So you've got the 4 that scored advanced and proficient, 3 that scored unsatisfactory, and then the 3 that are below basic. But in this school, they have determined that 80% of their students are needing tier 1. This means that some of the high intensity practices reserved for tier 2 and 3 in school A are now being used within the tier 1 for the school B. Because the school is using high intensity practices for all their students, they can reserve even more intensive interventions for students who are 9 and 10, those students 9 and 10 who need the tier 2 and tier 3. And then the difference between tier 2 and 3 we'll talk about, and you also learned about earlier, is that individualization of the intervention intensity. Okay, so tier 1 universal school-wide supports. I put this just like before we talk about tier 1. Explicit systematic instruction is foundational to tier 1. A lot of these slides are similar to this morning, or if not the same as Alexa's, but this is going to give you the opportunity to like talk about what your school has and what you can strengthen and things like that. So evidence-based practices begin with universal supports for all students in academic and behavior and mental health. So I just snipped like that part of the framework, the tier 1 school-wide, academic and behavioral. Academics are things like instructional practices, instructional materials, and it's aligned with standards. And then behavior is the prevent, teach, reinforce, respond practices, and then your school climate and culture. So when you think about academics for like school-wide, the whole school, this is things like the screener, align curriculum, align instructional practices based on school-wide data for student needs, and then progress monitoring tools to ensure student progress. And then this is the discussion part. So I want you to think about these kinds of things that we maybe like started to think about this morning. What universal school-wide supports does your school have in place for academics? And then how are teachers accessing knowledge and resources for these supports? So if you are a teacher, thinking about how you're accessing that. If you're an administrator, how are your teachers accessing that? And then you should have sticky notes. If you don't, let me know and we'll get them to you. I want you as a table or as a school, if you have more than one school at your table, you can either do it like your table or your school. Make one sticky note for academic school-wide support that your school does well, and then one academic school-wide support that you want to intentionally strengthen. Then I want you to hold on to the sticky notes because we are going to put them up there, but not yet. So I'm going to set a timer for like 3 minutes. I know that's not a whole lot of time, but just talk with your table and then come up with one academic. We're thinking about academic and thinking about school-wide that you do well, and then one that you want to strengthen. You're going to have more than one sticky note per table, but at least just the two for those. If you have extra time and want to talk about more than just one, that's totally fine. But as far as sticky notes, you can just do the one for well and one for strengthen. Yes. Yeah, thank you. Raise your hand if you need more time. There's about 1 minute left. Okay, hold on to those sticky notes because we're going to put them up in a little bit. We're going to move on to the behavior part. So thinking about school-wide behavior, these are things like using common language within the school, teaching school-wide expectations. Sometimes for schools, this might look like an acronym, like they've got an acronym with their expectations, reinforcing the expectations in some way, and then using aligned response processes throughout the whole school. Behavioral supports as a prevention should be an initial starting point, and this practice ensures the following: prevent, teach, reinforce, and respond. So on the next slide, I have the prevent, teach, reinforce, and respond with some resources underneath each. And I'll just kind of show you briefly what those look like. They came from the OSU Bridge Center, so you can access them for free online if you want to use them. They're just kind of like visuals to see what that means. But prevent is that all staff members uphold the expectations in the common language. Like I said, sometimes in schools, this can be an acronym. So let me pull them up. A behavior matrix you could use to set what those expectations are. Some schools might have one of these made already, or maybe like informally made, but it just kind of lists out the expectations. Like I said, sometimes it's an acronym. And so you'd have like the expectations and then what the places in your school and how those expectations are expected to look like in that spot. So this is a behavior matrix. There is a template as well online. And so if you don't have one and you need to make one, then there's a template. You don't have to like create it from scratch. But this is an example. I know it's kind of small of what that might look like. And then the teach part is that all students, of course, are taught those expectations. In that case, there might be a lesson plan that a teacher could grab that's already created for that expectation that they can use in their classroom and then tailor it to the grade that they teach. So I have an example of that as well. This is just the objective, what you're wanting them to learn, and then the expectations. So for be responsible, what are we wanting them to do? For be respectful, what are we wanting them to do? And then directions for teaching it. So thinking school-wide, tier 1, this is just something a teacher can grab, then use that lesson plan to teach that expectation. For reinforce, all staff members support reinforcing the expectations. So that's how we're acknowledging the behavior. And so that can kind of look like a matrix too, but thinking about like what it is, who is it for, how they're going to earn that, where it's going to be, when is it going to happen, how often, and then who's going to be the coordinators for that. So that part is the reinforcing those behaviors. And then responding, behavior referrals are followed up with supports to provide students with additional differentiated learning opportunities to enhance behavioral outcomes. Sorry, I knew it would do that, and I pushed the wrong button anyway. Okay. In elementary school, it's likely that students may have not had those experiences provided to them with enough opportunity to know better. Sometimes, like our kindergartners are literally learning how to be human, so they might not have had the opportunity to practice some of these expectations. It's the responsibility of the teacher, of course, to explicitly teach those expected actions. That's why it's helpful to have those lesson plans for some of our newer teachers to just grab it and have that lesson plan, not have to think necessarily about like every single school-wide expectation that's already out there. In secondary, students may have transitions and different teachers to interact with, and so they're going to need to be taught how that educator wants them to behave in their classroom. They might have different expectations. Knowing just like school-wide what the overall expectations are helpful throughout those transitions. And then I put a QR code for the behavior matrix template as well if you want to access it as we move into this discussion. So thinking about the same thing as before, school-wide, except thinking about behavior this time. Thinking about like, how are teachers accessing the knowledge? What do you already have? And then the same thing as before, one thing that you do well, and then one thing that you want to intentionally strengthen, but this time thinking about behavior. On your table, you'll have academic and behavior sticky notes for this tier 1 school-wide. And then when you're done having that conversation, if you'll go into the corner over there, you can just have one person at your table and then just stick the sticky note up where it goes over there. And then we'll come together in at least 3 minutes. And then once you have those conversations, when you're done at any time, you can go and stick the sticky notes. So
so much.
I know behavior is a lot harder of a topic to come up with these answers. It's a lot heavier of a topic to kind of dive into. I see a lot of people getting up to do the sticky notes. I'm going to give you about 2 more minutes to make your sticky notes and then put them up in the corner. But like I said, I know behavior takes a lot more time to kind of dive into. We'll come back in just a moment. I apologize for the line. I knew this would happen, but I wasn't sure how many sticky note places there would be, so I didn't want to make a whole bunch and waste paper. So, sorry. So thinking about some of the things that might be on your sticky notes, maybe you wrote down your school expectations. Sometimes that's an acronym. Maybe you already have a behavior matrix for your school. Maybe you have rewards that are set for your students when they meet those expected behaviors. Common language for correcting behavior, like when you see a student that's not yours in the hallway, maybe. Some sort of positive reinforcement. Behavior data reviewed regularly, behaviors modeled explicitly and frequently. Those are just some ideas and things that might have popped up on your sticky notes. There are quite a lot of sticky notes over there. This is a part where I am going to make you move, and I'm so sorry if you're comfortable. I want you to be able to talk to different schools. If you are at your table with a bunch of people from your school, I want you to also hear what other schools are doing, because there are a lot of evidence-based practices, a lot of supports that exist, but there's nothing like hearing it from another school, like what's working, what's not working. So I want you to find someone who's not at your table, and I want you to share what your group put on their sticky notes. And then I want you to take back one of the supports, either academic, behavior, or both, and then discuss it with your table. Once you're back at your table, you can just discuss what you brought back to the table. So I'm going to give you about 8 minutes to do this. That's like 4-ish minutes to talk to someone else, and then 4 minutes to talk with your table. You don't have to be that like organized in it. But I'm going to set a timer and I'll give you like a halfway mark. But I want you to be able to talk to other schools, because I think that's what is going to be beneficial. Like, what are you doing? What's working? What's not working? So I'm going to set a timer now for 8 minutes. Go find someone else that is not at your school and learn what they're doing. Remember, we're just talking about tier one school-wide right now. The next conversations will be about class-wide, so what's happening in the classrooms. But this is school-wide tier one. You also don't have to get up and physically move. I see a lot of people like turning around to the table next to them. That's also okay. We'll come back together in about 4 minutes. 1 minute. Okay, we're going to come back in just a second. I see a lot of people really into their conversation. I apologize to cut you short. We are going to move on to class-wide. So pretty similar to what we talked about with school-wide, but just thinking about class-wide now. So thinking about academics, so I kind of did the same thing where I clipped it up there. We're talking about class-wide. Sorry, it says school-wide. That was my bad. That's a typo. Class-wide academics. So things like common formative assessments, differentiation, small group instruction, and evidence-based teaching strategies like explicit teaching, repeated opportunities for practice, reteaching, multiple methods of instruction, frequent opportunities for feedback. Thinking about the class now. So thinking about what universal class-wide supports does the classroom have in place for academics, curriculum, assessments, instructional practices? How are teachers accessing knowledge and resources for these supports? And then thinking about academic class-wide supports that your school does really well. And then academic class-wide support you want to intentionally strengthen. That's a little bit harder if you are an administrator, but thinking about what your teachers are doing in their class. What are some academic class-wide supports you've seen in your classroom, and some that you want to strengthen for academic class-wide? Hold on to these sticky notes because we'll do the same thing and just bring them up at one time. So give you a couple minutes to talk about that. If you have extra time and you want to bring your sticky note up there already, you can, that's fine. But if it helps to hold on to them, that's also okay. I know there was a line. Come back in a minute. Okay. Thinking about what might be on your sticky notes, you might have explicit instruction, I do, we do, you do, teacher modeling, guided practice, opportunities for independent practice. The learning objectives might be posted and referred to, small groups, differentiation, formative assessments, frequent checks for understanding, immediate error correction and feedback, and multiple opportunities to respond. Those are just some things that might be on your sticky notes. And then thinking about universal class-wide supports for behavior. So what's going on in the classroom for behavior? Building positive relationships with all students to build trust and respect. Ensuring active supervision and engagement. Teaching behavioral supports for explicit instructions and corrections for behaviors. Reinforcing behaviors with specific praise, token economies, and group contingencies. And then you can continue your discussion about behavior class-wide supports, things that you're seeing in the classroom, either you're doing in your classroom, if you're an administrator, what your teachers are doing, thinking about what is in place for behavior, how are teachers accessing that, and then one sticky note for a behavior class-wide support, and then one that you intentionally want to strengthen. And then you can go and put your sticky notes up on the sticky notes back there. I know behavior is a little bit longer of a deep dive, so I'm going to give you like 4 minutes, still not a lot of time to talk about it. Then you can put your sticky notes up. Once you have your sticky notes, you can put them over there. Again, it's to the left of the school line. I see some people going to put their sticky notes up. We've got about 1 minute left, and then we'll move on to the next. I know this is not a lot of time to dive deep into these things, so I apologize. We'll come back together in just a moment. I apologize to everyone on this side of the room. You did not come in here expecting to exercise, and I'm so sorry that it's all the way over there. Such a long walk. Some of the things that might be on those sticky notes are explicitly teaching classroom behaviors and expectations, modeling correct behaviors, consistent reinforcement of behaviors, visual reminders, opportunities to practice behavior, opportunities for movement, space for regulation. Sometimes there's like a take a break area. Classroom rules are posted and referred to. Reward system might be in place. Predictable daily schedule. Clear procedure for transitions. Behavior-specific praise and appropriate instructional pacing. There's some things that might be on your sticky notes for class-wide behavior. And the same thing we did before, just talking to other schools. What are they doing for behavior? What's working? What is not working? Go talk to other schools and figure out what is going on in their building and if they've found anything that works for them. I set a timer and I'll let you know when we're like halfway through the timer. Come back in about 7 minutes. It could also be academic, sorry. You talk about academic or behavior. But what is working for their school and what do they need to strengthen? We'll come back in about 4 minutes. Okay. It got quieter, so I'm going to assume that you were wrapping up some of your conversations. So I'm going to move on to tier 2, interventions. So thinking about interventions, interventions are layered on top of tier 1 supports, and they include a standard protocol. They're evidence-based, and they're targeted to address specific skill deficits. Looking for the most appropriate tier 2 interventions is going to depend on your students' needs. I put in a analogy, like a medical analogy for this, because I thought it was really helpful when I'm thinking about like, what is the different tiers? So thinking about tier 1, in the medical world, things like annual checkups, vaccinations, nutrition, getting sleep, preventative screenings. Those are those tier 1 things, the things that everyone hopefully should be doing. Hopefully everyone's getting sleep, getting their annual checkups, things like that. Education, that would be high quality core instruction, evidence-based instructional practices. Of course, if everything at tier 1 is weak, like you're not going to the doctor, you're not getting sleep, you're not eating right, everything is going to become more of an emergency. Keeping people healthy so we don't overwhelm the system. And then tier 2 in the medical world, thinking about like a protocol based on the symptoms and screening, prescribed medications or treatment protocols based on those symptoms, standard dosage and schedule for that protocol, follow-up visits to check effectiveness. Like if something is wrong, then I might need to take a medicine, so much dosage of the medicine this many times per day. And then in education, evidence-based interventions, standard protocols targeted to a specific skill deficit, delivered with frequency and duration, and then progress monitored regularly. So in this case, tier 1 wasn't enough. So now there's a prescribed action plan. That's not a trial and error, but it's a research evidence-based treatment plan to address the specific deficit. For tier 3, thinking about medical, this would be like adjusting the medication dosage, maybe a specialist referral, combination protocols, more frequent monitoring and lab work. In education, intensifying the intervention. So it's maybe smaller groups or one-on-one, increasing the dosage, individualized adjustments, frequent progress monitoring. Tier 3 is going to be when the standard treatment wasn't enough. So now you have to adjust the plan based on the response. And then thinking about why fidelity matters. Well, if I'm prescribed a medication and I'm not taking it, and it's probably not going to work. Maybe taking antibiotics inconsistently, skipping my dosage, changing the dosage without guidance, and like, okay, maybe I'm going to take 2 of them and that'll work better. Doubling up on the medicine, those kinds of things. In education, maybe skipping sessions, doubling up on the dosage to make up for a skip session. Inconsistent delivery across students, modifying the intervention randomly. Those would be things that would break the fidelity of an intervention or a protocol. So if your medicine's not working, we don't change the protocol right away or completely change the diagnosis even. We have to first check if it's taken correctly and then adjust from there. Thinking about tier 2 interventions, within an effective MTSS framework, approximately 10 to 15 students should be accessing tier 2 interventions. It's not the same as reteaching. For example, if a teacher notices that the class does not understand single-digit multiplication, they might have students practice the skill again or work with some students on the same content at the back table. This should occur within the tier 1 framework. Tier 2 interventions are specific to a skill deficit and use a standardized protocol to support student outcomes. So an intervention is not a general action or response to a student's difficulties. It does not replace high quality instruction, and it's not a universal practice, like teaching the entire class or assigning generic homework. It's not a disciplinary measure, so it's not like sending your student to the office. It's not a one-time or inconsistent thing, so you can't say, okay, I did it one time, that's the intervention. It's not a referral, like simply sending a student to the counselor or special education team, and it's not a generic accommodation, like allowing extra time on a test or seating a student closer to the teacher. So same thing we did before, if you'll think about interventions for academics. The question's a little bit different this time, but thinking about what does that look like in your school? How do you determine which students need those interventions, and how are teachers accessing that knowledge? This time, if you'll grab the sticky notes and put down 2 academic interventions that are used in your school. And then you can either hold on to them or go and not tape them, stick them up there. That's up to you, but we will come back in about 3 minutes. So thinking about interventions for academic. Could be any grade level, any content area, just 2 academic interventions that are used in your school or your district. But back in about 1 minute. Okay. Some things that might be on your sticky notes. I'll admit I am a elementary teacher, and so these are some more ones like I use in my classroom for elementary. But things that I might have put are like L. Conan boxes, fact fluency, repeated readings, timed readings, cover, copy, compare, incremental rehearsal. There are just some ideas for some academic interventions. And then if you'll continue your conversation thinking about behavior. So what do behavior interventions look like at your school? How do you determine which students are needing those interventions? How do teachers access intervention knowledge? And then do the same thing, grab some sticky notes and identify at least 2 behavior interventions that are used in your school. And then you can go ahead and put them up. Come back in 3 minutes. 1 minute. Okay. Some things that might be on your sticky notes are things like check in, check out, self-monitoring, instructional choice, and some group contingencies. Same thing as before, take some time and talk to another school. What interventions are they doing for academic and behavior? What's working, what's not working? What did they put on their sticky notes? What did you put on your sticky notes? I'm gonna set a timer for 5 minutes. Learn what another school is doing for interventions. We'll come back in 2 minutes. Okay. So if you are needing some resources for interventions for academic or behavior, we do have an intervention library on the website, on the MTSS website. So I have the link up there. You can just go to the website and search MTSS, or a lot of times, like I said, I'll just go to Google and type OSDE MTSS. It's a lot of letters, but it gets me where I need to be. And then there's an intervention library. It's like almost kind of at the bottom of the page. It is a page within a page. And so if you want it to be more accessible and easy to filter and things like that, you can click view larger version and it'll open up another window into Airtable. There's an academic and a behavior one. So there's a lot of interventions in there and strategies that you can use. Honestly, tier 1 strategies in there as well to utilize for different content areas. There will be more added in there as well. So we're constantly building to the library. But if you really don't have a place to start and you're like, I need more intervention ideas, then that's a good place to look. I also included an implementation log. So if we're thinking about tier 2 interventions, they're most effective when they're delivered as designed, like the protocol. So in this intervention library, if you click on the little box, it'll pull up the whole protocol. So it'll be like step-by-step instructions of how to do that intervention that you can print out and use. But they also have to be provided consistently and they have to be documented accurately. Before changing or intensifying an intervention, the team has to be able to answer, was the intervention implemented as intended? So an intervention log can help you with a valuable puzzle piece, I call it, when looking at the effectiveness of an intervention. So it allows the team to see whether the intervention was offered. I know it sounds silly, but you have to do the intervention for it to work. Whether the student was present, if they were engaged, or any other adjustments that occurred. I know I say it sounds silly that it has to be done in order to be effective, but a lot of times as teachers, we might just like forget, like the student was pulled out here and the student was pulled out for this, and then the fire alarm went off and I don't even know if I did it and I don't know who was at my table. Like sometimes these things, it's just hard to remember. So if we have an implementation log, it can be helpful to just mark, yes, it was done, I offered it, the student was present. This specific one, I'll pull up real quick. This one comes from the NCII website, but it asks more questions than just like if you did it or not. It also asks, did I offer it? And then was the student present? So maybe it's a small group and you've got like 4 students. You can mark, yes, I offered it, but maybe no, the student wasn't present. You can also mark, was the student engaged? Because maybe they were rolling around the carpet during the intervention. So like I offered it and they were present, but they were not engaged because they were under the table. You can also mark, was the intervention implemented as planned? So maybe the fire alarm went off whenever I was doing it. Those kinds of things you can mark on this log that just kind of help you remember that you did it and for how long you did it and how engaged the student was when you're looking at that kind of data to determine if it's working or not. There's also a fidelity check and implementation log. Those are both things for clarity. The fidelity check can give us another important puzzle piece in the larger picture when we're looking at if an intervention worked. It supports calculation of the attention to the protocol. So did I follow the instructional methods, the intervention implementation, as the research says? Was the student engaged? And was I scoring and doing accurate data collection? And the team can use the fidelity score to support the additional next steps. So I say it's like a puzzle piece too, because it gives us more of a picture of like the teacher did it every day with fidelity. And maybe, you know, in 4 weeks, the student's score is not improving, but I have proved that I did it with the log and I proved with fidelity that it was done correctly. Maybe that's telling me that that student needs something else, right? So the fidelity check and the implementation log are really just puzzle pieces to our bigger picture. So I have kind of an activity which is all lined up on the stage. If you will have at least one person from your table come and grab enough fidelity checks and Smarties for everyone at your table. The Smarties you'll use in just a little bit to actually try the strategy. The fidelity check you're going to use to do a fidelity check with a video that I'm going to play. So if you'll come up, they're all around the stage. Just grab enough for your table to have at least one thing of Smarties. And then everyone will need a fidelity check to practice the fidelity check in the next slide. They're on both sides and they are spread out. So hopefully that helps with a line. While you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and get the video ready. But what we're going to do is watch a teacher doing Elkonin boxes, and then we'll do fidelity for it. Sorry, I'm just trying to see if it works. I'm not ready yet. Okay, does everyone have a fidelity check? Or even if the person next to you has one, that's okay. I'm going to play this video and give you an opportunity to look through this fidelity check and mark whether you see that happening in this video. Just to kind of guide you through like what this looks like, because I know you might be looking at it for the first time and now making you do it with a video. It's asking for the skill support. So does it match the skill that the teacher's wanting them to learn? Does the teacher have all the materials ready? Are they prepared? And then the intervention implementation part. Is the instruction aligned to the goal's intended outcome? Is a teacher beginning with the steps in order for explicit teaching? So are they doing I do, we do, you do? Are they modeling the task? Are they modeling the actions of the student, like what the student's going to do? Are they moving at an observable pace, responding to the errors, responding to the correct responses? And then is the instruction set up with appropriate strength and dosage? Are they making use of appropriate academic and behavioral supports? And are they ensuring alignment to transfer and comprehensiveness of the skill deficit? So is this something that can be used in another context? Then it asks about student engagement. Is the student engaged? Are they responding to error corrections? Praise, are they doing the task? And the back side is asking about documentation of intervention data. This is something that you might not be able to answer just for this video, because you might not see the teacher actually documenting, but I'm going to play the video and we'll see what we do see during it. Yes, and they're not working. Let me see. Let's see. Benjamin, do you have any subtitles? Because they're marked, but they're not popping up. Yeah, well, we want to do that. Each one of these will be one fact, okay? But the word that I'm going to read that, it's not read that. I'm going to put my chips at the bottom. And I'm just doesn't like you. I know. So give me in first.
Then, in, or beginning, then, flag. Okay, so the first one is man, and man. Watch me. Amen. Good job. Okay. You do your own.
Oh. Good. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I should.
Okay.
I made it work.
Yeah, I don't know.
Good job. Do your own.
At least maybe the auto captions are not done well.
Yeah.
I think that's all it is.
Okay. Well, something to think about next time.
Options.
So my son might video again.
The next one is the sheep. The word sheep.
No, just matters.
Okay. Well, I tried.
Okay.
It's just random words though.
YouTube just failed. That's it. Yeah, their auto captions are not working. I'm sorry.
It's not your fault.
The next word is a peach. Let's go. E for peach. Good job. Okay, that's gonna be fun. I'm gonna look this up, okay? All right, let's see. That one. Ready? Okay. Look, let me see you do it one more time. Look. Look, okay, do this for myself, right? Okay, do home. Good job. No, one time you can go. What again? Push down, push down. Okay? All right, the last word is pink. Good job. Okay, all right. So now.
Okay. So hopefully that gave you just some brief practice of what it's like to do a fidelity check. For teachers, if someone else came in the room and did it for you for when you're implementing, and that can help provide that documentation and help give you assurance too of like, I'm doing it how the research says. So if the scores are not presenting with improvement, then that's when I know that something else needs to change. But also, if you recorded a video of yourself and did it back, if someone else wasn't able to watch, that's also a way you could do a fidelity check for yourself. What we're going to do now is just practice doing a strategy with fidelity. I know this is more of like an elementary strategy, so if you're in like that secondary realm, you can still practice it. It's still okay, because I want you to think about like the I do, the we do, and the you do part of it, the modeling, guided practice, and independent part. So that's why you have Smarties with you. If you want to open them, those can be your counters. And then you also have paper for Elkonin boxes like she did in the video. You can just draw the boxes, draw little, like 3 little boxes or 4 little boxes with the line, and then practicing it. I have it up here, but it's really tiny. So if you want to do like the QR code, or if you go to the MTSS website and find the intervention library, type in Elkonin boxes, you can find it that way. And then I give you some words to practice with. You can have someone do the fidelity check while you do the strategy, or you can just practice a strategy, whatever you want to do for this part, just to kind of get practice of what it's like to do an intervention with fidelity. We're in the last 15 minutes of our presentation too, so I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to do this, and then we'll wrap up with tier 3. We'll come back in 2 minutes. One minute. Okay. Tier 3 interventions. What makes tier 3 interventions different? You're intensifying a tier 2 intervention. So thinking about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 1 is going to be what 80% of your students are needing: curriculum with more independence, small groups with advanced supports, differentiation, reteaching and extensions. Those can all live in tier 1. Tier 2 is standard protocol. And then tier 3 is going to be adding additional intensity. If the intervention needs to be intensified, thinking about, is the intervention truly targeting the deficit? Reflecting on your data, is the student accurate at a rate that is acceptable? Are they continuing to demonstrate the skills? Could the frequency of the intervention be increased? Could we increase more individual opportunities to participate in the strategy? So the National Center for Intensive Intervention has developed the taxonomy of interventions. These were in the slides this morning. So it's the same slides, just thinking about these different ways to intensify an intervention: strength, dosage, alignment, attention to transfer, comprehensiveness, behavioral or academic support, and individualization. So like I said, same slides as earlier in the day. Strength, the evidence, the intervention has strong effectiveness for students with intensive needs. Questions to consider: is this an evidence-based intervention? What evidence supports using this strategy with students with intensive needs? Does this intervention support learners with intensive challenges? Dosage is the number of opportunities a student must respond to and receive feedback from the teacher. What frequency of this intervention will best support the student change? What frequency of this intervention can a student tolerate to remain engaged? Alignment is how well the intervention matches the targeted academic skill or behavior of concern, as well as how it incorporates grade level standards or behaviors we would expect for a particular context. Does the intervention relate to the student's deficit, and does the intervention respond to the grade and expected ability of the student? Attention to transfer relates to whether the intervention is explicitly designed to help students make connections between the skills taught in the intervention and the skills learned in other contexts and environments. Does the intervention relate to grade level standards and progression all students are taught? Does the intervention support universal instruction? Will the student be able to transfer this skill to a related skill? Comprehensiveness is how well the intervention incorporates a comprehensive array of explicit instruction principles. Does the intervention support the educator to provide explicit instruction? Does the student respond to the method of explicit instruction? Behavioral or academic supports relate to whether an academic intervention incorporates behavioral strategies that may support students with self-regulation, motivation, or externalizing behaviors that may impact their ability to learn. This type of support determines whether behavioral intervention considers the academic components as part of the intervention. Does the student need related support to access the intention of the intervention? How can the educator support the student as a whole child? So if you need to use Smarties instead of counters and that helps support this behavior of the student, then that is one way to add in a behavior support, because they can eat them afterwards. Individualization focuses on the ongoing use of progress monitoring data and other diagnostic data sources to intensify and individualize the intervention based on the student need. Has progress monitoring revealed a trend of data indicating positive response to the intervention and trending towards the goal? And does the student need a change in the intervention intensity to achieve the growth? So just thinking real quick about the interventions, like the tier 3 interventions, thinking about what does that look like in your school, and for the sticky notes, thinking about ways that that's different than tier 2. So how is tier 2 and tier 3 looking different in your school? Then you'll just go put them up on the board. We're running out of time, so I'm going to move on to this of what might be on your sticky note as you're writing your sticky notes too. So giving you some ideas as you're thinking of your sticky notes. Maybe they're one-on-one, SPED, smaller groups, increased frequency. Maybe they meet like 3 times a week instead of 1 time a week, or all 5 days of the week. More explicit modeling and guided practice, more frequent progress monitoring. And then just talking to other tables. So we can do it all at the same time because we're running out of time, but making sticky notes, sticking them up there, thinking about how that looks different. Maybe turn to another table and see how that looks different at their school. And then we'll come back in like 2 minutes. I gave you a lot to do in 2 minutes. I'm going to go back to this page though. Just some general things to think about too as you're talking with your table. Thinking about what tier systems feel the strongest in your building and where you're noticing gaps as you were filling out those sticky notes and sticking them up there. And then in the next 30 days, what's one small change your team could do to improve MTSS? As you are finishing your conversations and leaving this session, if you want to go and take a look at the sticky notes, take a picture of them so you can read it later. If that will help you just gather ideas. I know we kind of move through things quickly today. Taking a picture and seeing what other schools does helps. Go do that. Take photos and reflect on the similarities and the differences between your school and other schools. And then there are extra fidelity checks, extra Smarties if you want to take some with you. And I will leave this up here. I think there is a school panel next. So if you need to go to the bathroom as you're on your way looking at the sticky notes, we'll come back in and do a school panel and then we'll dismiss for the day. So thank you for spending time with me and you can continue your conversation. There's my contact information too. Thank you for bearing with me as I made you talk a lot to each other after a whole day of talking to each other and likely being stuck in the car with each other and probably going to be stuck with each other afterwards. What? Yes. Yep. So we're going to start a school panel too. So if you need to go to the bathroom and come back, there will be some people on the stage. Yasmin will ask some questions, just kind of seeing where other schools are at with MTSS. So kind of like I was making you think about what other schools are doing and what you're doing in this session. We're actually going to have some people up here to talk about it. If you are not staying for the school panel, which we would love you to stay, regardless, please remember that tomorrow is virtual. Do not show up here. It's not going to be safe to show up here. But please register. If you have not registered for tomorrow, please register so you have the link to access tomorrow if you plan to attend. But don't come here in person. We'll get started with the school panel soon.